Welcome to X. Welcome to episode 69 of They Talk Funny with my guest Ron James, a man of a million words and a million laughs whose gist is his genius. That's the Globe and Mail quote that goes with him. Boom. A man of a million words and a million laughs, whose jest is his genius. That's what the Globe and Mail has said about my guest today, Ron James. This is episode 69 of They Talk Funny. Consistently hailed by audiences and critics from coast to coast, Ron James has been selling out theaters in Canada for more than 20 years. This verbal gymnast marries a comedian's eye for satire with a writer's ear for language, taking fans on a non-stop roller coaster ride that cuts a wide swath through contemporary culture with razor-sharp wit and a poetically honed delivery. He has written and starred in a record-breaking 9 one-hour critically acclaimed CBC comedy specials. He's created and starred in 2 television series, and on September 28th of this year, the publishing giant Penguin Random House will be releasing his first book, All Over the Map, a raucous Canadian journey running full tilt from the past to the present, covering the road between his ears. Please welcome to the screen my guest, Ron James.
How you doing?
I am doing well.
Yeah.
I guess we couldn't get away with no glitches getting this started. This is
Buddy, you're talking to a 63-year-old boomer here. I have to put an emergency call into my eldest daughter, but she puts. Oh, I think she blocks me when it comes to questions about technology. But we did okay. We're on, man. It's all good.
We're on. I'm not that much younger than you. Actually, my siblings are about your age, so it's I'm a boomer as well.
These FLQ references, then, right? We've got FLQ and Beachcombers references and things like that with Canada, North Stars and Jacques Lemaire, all that stuff.
Easily being covered. And I also want to welcome all the viewers. We've got viewers in here. If you just want to comment where you're watching from and say hi to Ron. And if anyone has any questions for Ron, you can add them into the chat. I'll bring them onto the screen. So you have a new book coming out.
I do. Look, here it is.
If you want to see it, I have it right here. There we go.
Oh, they give you. Did they send you the book?
They haven't sent me the full book. I've got excerpts, but I've got
How about that?
I just put the image up on screen.
Well, it was a long labor of love, but it goes. It's hard work sitting down at a desk and meeting deadlines and paying attention to the minutia of detail and beginning with that blank page, right? And but I was fortunate. I was very diligent in keeping journals on the road before social media kicked in, and I was face first in my Instagram feed trying to send people pictures of the French fries I had on my plate at Restigouche. Some innocuous detail that doesn't mean anything. But anyway, so I did. I kept moleskins, and I kept them diligently. So I've got a couple of banker's boxes filled with journals over the last 20 years. And then there were some stories. Never throw anything away if there's any comedians paying attention or aspiring writers, because it comes back. There's one section in my book actually where I had written some stories on yellow legal pad 30 years ago in Los Angeles when I was just trying to stay sane in that sun-punished paradise chasing the sitcom Green.
Yeah, you mentioned that we also Rumination is saying hello from Scarborough, so we've got
Rumination.
watchers. Now, you started you studied in school, sort of got bit by theater or forced into theater, and then
I went legitimately. It was an English course, English 267, taught by this great old doyen of the Irish stage, Evelyn Garbery. And we did a play, Our Town, and then I did a couple of musicals, Charlie Brown. and Musicadians, but mostly I had a lot of fun after a couple of hot knives, riffing with my buddies. And they just say, "Give James some." The hash would come in on Friday night. They'd say, "Give James some," and I'd go for like 2 hours, just riffing, and or we'd do some shenanigans in the variety show, right? I mean, the year after Elvis died, we went down to the Undertaker's and got a training coffin that I guess they trained. It was just like a pauper's coffin, and I got in it dressed as Elvis and jumped out, and I said, "This is my first live performance since I died last August." Anyway, we just ripped it up, man, and turned the tables on what had up until that time been very earnest renditions of Fire and Rain by all the Annapolis Valley folkies. So anyway, that's where I got my inspiration, but also growing up in Halifax, where I'm from, my family were funny. Mom loved to laugh, and she was comical, and Dad was a real great joke teller, which I feature in this book. And my home was a vibrant and vital place of friends and family and good times and bad. It it made me.
That's an important thing, and the East Coast culture is also, it's very musical, a lot of storytelling in the culture. I'm from the Halifax County area myself.
Oh, where are you from?
Porter's Lake.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
You're from Porter's Lake? No shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to be up on Porter's Lake all the time, and we'd go down fishing at my uncle's Lake Charlotte.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Lake Charlotte is closer because my high school was in Musquodoboit Harbor.
Well, there you go. We'd go for sea trout at the mouth of the Musquodoboit River. Best catch of sea trout I ever had in my life, with Uncle Percy, Doug Llewellyn, and my dad. They were in about barely 10 yards from us. We got 11 big sea trout. And they got a pollock and 2 little ones. And there's a picture, and I still have the pictures, but my aunt and her friend took the picture, and I've got all these trout. My hands are bloody, but you can't see my head. You got my head on. Oh, I didn't know It's like, man, that's right on, Paul. Good stuff.
Oh yeah, as a kid, the Musquodoboit River, all up in my mother was from Sheet Harbor, the whole kibitz.
Yeah, they can fight in Sheet Harbor. They're pretty greasy down that way.
Well, they accepted my dad, and he was from Newfoundland, so it's
there you go. Good stuff.
All good.
Pretty hard not to like a Newfoundlander. I just came back from performing over there, and I was at Woody Point, first performance I've had since the Halifax Comedy Fest, October last year, and that was the first one I'd had since I stepped off stage in Hamilton Place on March 7th. And I left Newfoundland thinking, man, if you don't leave this place with a smile on your face and a spring in the step, there's not a medication in the world to put one there.
It's definitely a beautiful part of the country.
Newfoundlander too.
Sorry?
My father was a Newfoundlander too. My mom was a Cape Bretoner. So let's say to people with a pedigree like that, was comedy even an option?
Not an option, you mean? Was comedy an option? You were forced into it just by...
Come on, just by genetics.
I totally agree. My father was a bayman, so from...
there you go.
Yeah, from Bonavista Bay, a little place called Portland. Now, you when you graduated Acadia, you went to Toronto, which is covered a little bit in the book, and you did Second City.
Yeah, I got into Second City. I got a BA in history, and so I came up here and started taking classes, acting classes, Second City classes. But I really found my groove in Second City. I tried stand-up a few times at the old Yuck Yucks on Bay Street, and I talk about that in the book too, when I saw the incendiary, retina-burning sets of young Mike Macdonald, which I had never seen anything quite like it in my life. And I was mesmerized by this alchemist pulling gold from straw, standing in the solo spot. And I know, and I never saw Norm Macdonald when I was younger, so I have no reference for him, and God bless him, he's gone today.
He just passed today, yeah.
But Mike, for me, was a totemic figure in the comedic pantheon of Canadian comedians. And he was always good to me. He could be rough, hard, discerning comedic, obsidian, sharp mind. But anyway, I tried Yuck Yucks, and I didn't have the guts to bomb all the time in the beginning, right? And so I found my way into Second City and seemed to shine there. Eventually got in the touring company and traveled with them in the van and met my wife in '82, who would be my wife for 23 years. We've been split for 12. Mm-hmm. But I learned the craft in the company of like-minded, hungry young satirists in a heyday when we were making $350 a week and the world was our oyster. We traveled in a van, highways and byways of Ontario, no matter what kind of fury the winter weather was throwing at our windshield. It was remarkable.
That's that's the road life that experience is so it so helps form you in the camaraderie. Camaraderie with the.
In fact, one of the stage managers we had at the time said we shouldn't hold auditions at the old fire hall where we would hold them. We should hold them in the van, because it boils down to, how do you work with somebody? What do you like in real life? What do you like in real life? Mind you, I got to tip my hat to the Yuck Yucks guys, man. 4 guys in a no-name beater living on fast food and faith, heading to some north of nowhere biker bar where the owner knows where the bodies are buried. They'll be staying at some funky crib that smells of pine sol the maid used to scrub the stink of hopelessness away. That's suffering for your craft, brother.
You are a poet.
Thank you.
I mean, your word choices. You have such a huge vocabulary. You're such an intelligent man, and you're able to paint such a colorful picture, which is you've honed over the years. Now, what part of the excerpt that you sent me was talking about your life in LA, which is, with Second City, two of the other actors that you knew from Toronto had sold a show to Imagine Ron Howard's company, your talk show, and you went down to do this show in LA, and of course you were auditioning. Now, a lot of that is sort of covered, or parts of that are covered in Up and Down in Shaky Town, which was your first TV special. This, in the book, it gives a greater insight to that. It also it seems a little sadder in the book. Like Up and Down in Shaky Town was more. It was to be an entertaining play, which a one-man play / stand-up.
Well, I think it's bittersweet. There was such a bittersweet tone to Los Angeles, and perhaps subconsciously the sadness came in because it was a good time with my wife and daughter in those days, and maybe, I don't know, maybe my head was doing something with my pen when I was writing that, because just even to think about those days now when my eldest, who's 32, was little, when we were I put her in a knapsack and hiked the hills at Topanga, was, and when the eucalyptus, after the rain, the eucalyptus would be smelling, and would be permeating the woodlands. It's such a magical place. But I tried to give context to Los Angeles because it was such a defining moment in my life. It really did hone my conviction to shift the paradigm once I got back to Canada and follow my bliss according to my own standards. And it took a long time. But to get back to what you're talking about with words and the love of language, Shaky Town, first and foremost, had to be a performance piece. It was a narrative, a beginning, middle, and an end, where the jokes acted as an adhesive to the story.
Yes.
And my editors encouraged me to go deeper this time rather than just wait for the laughs all the time. They wanted resonance. They wanted heart. They wanted authenticity, I suppose. And
I was about to say realism, but yes.
Yeah. And so I explored that, and there's several stories in the book that aren't laugh-a-minute. I've got a story in the book about my uncle, who I'm named after, who wrestled his alcohol addiction to the mat after 2 years on Skid Row in Toronto, and I've got a piece in there about an Indigenous chap I gave a lift to in Airdrie, Alberta in 2019, who was stuck at the Petrocan pumps where the bus dropped him off, and he had to get up to Leduc. And there are moments in there where I explore the colonial settler mentality of the residential school system, and the impact of the 60 scoop on Indigenous children as executed by the Canadian government. And I wrote that the summer before last, and lo and behold, the horrible revelations that happened this year. But within that context, the context of the story I call Vern with the Indigenous chap, it's wrapped within the context of Second City, that you never bail in a scene, which is why I stayed once I made the choice to give the chap a lift. And when he was going to Leduc, and the reason I did was because he recognized me from television, and my ego got stroked. He goes, Ronnie James. Oh, no, goes, Ronnie James. I've been watching you since I was little. And I said, how old are you? He said, 57. I said, unless I guest starred on The Friendly Giant when I was 3, I doubt it. So there's jokes in there, you know. And for any boomers that are watching The Friendly Giant, or even the kids that are watching, you know, don't remember it, might have heard of him. Buddy was dressed as a giant, right? And he played the recorder, and he talked to a talking giraffe named Jerome, whose best friend was a rooster nailed to a bag on the wall. And they wonder why our generation did hallucinogenic drugs. So, pretty good.
Every kid's generation has it. I mean, even with Nintendo, where Mario is popping mushrooms to.
Oh yeah, was he?
Yeah. So that's all there. Denny Leger is popped in to say hello.
Hi,
Denny Leger is a good Acadian boy, a big fan of comedy as well. I personally, I've always sort of viewed your return from LA to like with the up and down to Shaky Town. I always thought it was like you were coming home riding a success, like as a young person, as a kid, seeing you in films with like Jim Varney, and the Ernest
Danny
film.
Boy, yeah, all those ones, yeah.
And up and down just seemed like the natural progression. You were a smaller fish in Hollywood, but you were a fish, and then coming back to Canada kind of gave you you were viewed more legitimate.
Well, I got my Ernest film when I came back to Canada.
Oh,
and the Danny Boy was after Canada. Danny Boy was after Canada too, and those were the days I was an actor. I mean, I stepped away from it. I got tired of waiting for the fucking phone to ring from some agent. The only time they call me is when the scripts call for Christmas elves, the mentally challenged, or accountants. So I was fairly limited in my scope, or nerds. And I wanted to make sense of the world on my own terms. And I had to process the 3 years in Los Angeles. It made me angry because we went down with such promise. And anger does fuel the funny, provided it's directed to the right place and things. And so, no, Shaky Town was the show that established my confidence as a solo performer that eventually had to metamorphose into stand-up. So I had to learn how to break the fourth wall, which is paramount in theater. I mean, someone can see a play and if it's good or if it's bad, they're still going to watch it. But I mean, if stand-up comedy is awful, they want to get on stage and punch you in the face.
Yeah.
They take it personal. They take it really personal. And so you have to break that fourth wall. And the thing with stand-up is it's integration with the audience. You break the fourth wall and you move in. So that was a whole process too for several years. I was at the Laugh Resort for 5 years. Great club. I played Yuck Yucks for one winter, which was instrumental as well. I learned an awful lot playing that club. And
did you do the road tours?
Pardon me? No, I didn't do the tours. I played Sudbury and I played London and Donny Coy's club down in Hamilton. And but I didn't want to hitch my cart to Yucks because I'd come through Second City and I knew the markup that they had on their corporate shows, and I just didn't want to get involved in that scrum again, which felt a little similar to Second City's. And so although different, but you know what I mean. Management picking favorites, who's going where, who's not going where, and CBC did the same later on. I guess corporations are like that. But I learned a great deal. But anyway, I stayed at the resort. Don't know how we managed to feed the kids on a comedian's salary all those years, but I did. And then after the Laugh Resort, but during the Laugh Resort, I started trying to book myself because I had Shaky Town. I would make these cold calls to theaters. Nobody was booking stand-up then when I started. They would say, oh no, we had some stand-ups in town and they were really dirty, really filthy. I said, well, so what? I said, look, you see a band, you don't like the music. Do you stop listening to music? You don't. You got to give it, everybody's different. And so I was able to sneak in the back door with Shaky Town to some of these theaters. And it was very minimal. I mean, I practically worked on a barter system with them, you know? I'd go down and play Picton or something like that, and someone from the 4-H club or from the Kinsmen would be working the sound. Another guy would be working the booth. I'd be on the stage. Then they'd give us a cottage for the weekend, and we thought we were winning. It was, you know, the hungry years, right?
Yes.
And to take the kids on a horseback ride or something. It was just a break from the city and the never-ending struggle to get up from being renters. But I kept at it, and I would send these. I got some good reviews for Shaky Town, and I would send them out. And then I got some cassettes. You know, I taped it for the Definitely Not the Opera. So it was a victory in baby steps, but fraught with disappointment and fraught with constant. I did it myself. The agents don't know what to do. I just did it myself. It was constant work and worry. But I kept at it because energy expended is energy returned. And ironically, Paul, I find myself in the same loop again these days, you know. I reflect on that early day an awful lot during this pandemic, how all of us had to shift gears and work within the context of the demands that the pandemic was making of us.
Yeah, because the pandemic. I want to touch on the pandemic maybe a little bit later, but it definitely has shaped how a lot of the industry has been working. Recently. You're a Canadian icon. You've got 9 televised specials. The first of which was Up and Down in Shaky Town,
and then the rest were on CBC.
The rest were on CBC.
Yeah.
You've also had 2 TV series as well. And I've on this show in the past have been people who've been in your writing room, and they spoke about your diligence. They would come in with 3-4 pages, and then each day you'd come in with like 20 new pages. You'd be able to take the pages that they gave and then punch it up what they thought it was like the best they could do, and then you would elevate it just with your knowledge of the word craft.
That's very kind of them, Paul. Thank you.
Well, you are very much respected as a writer as well as a performer in this industry. And I just kind of was wondering, how often are you spending like writing each day? Do you feel driven? Have you built up that habit that you have to get up, you have to write, or how do you tackle it?
Well, I will tell you, Paul, it comes and goes. Like any writer will tell you, it's good to have deadlines. Mm-hmm. You know, I threw 163 pages of the book out, right? And with the ADHD, I was having difficulty. Before I was diagnosed, I'm diagnosed now, so I know what it is. Mm-hmm. I was having a great deal of difficulty sitting still. And then COVID demanded I concentrate on that, and I didn't want to drop the ball. So that's one thing. Deadline for the book, adhering to the demands of my publisher. And then prior to that, the demands of the network, you know, and you have to feed the machine, and television has an insatiable appetite. However, that being said, my first 5 specials, I wrote them myself, and I wrote one each year, and they were anywhere between 70 and 85 pages.
Which translates to the screen to be about 75 to 85 minutes. It's usually a page a minute.
Correct. And then we cut it down to, it would have to be, we shoot the performance, and then we cut it down to 42. And I'd memorized those first 5. And I will tell you, there was a fire in my belly to get the job done right. My father always wanted a job done right, and he wasn't draconian. He wasn't fierce about it. He just was meticulous about his work. And you can see it in his sanded floors of his home. You could see it in the way he took care of his lawn. You could see it in how he organized his carpentry shop. He set a standard. Second City also set a standard. And a lot of people don't know, it's in the book though, but I was fired from Second City. You know, they could be rather ruthless. And a lot of people were fired from Second City. It used to be the saying, get fired, get famous. It was a cold shower, really affected me. Mind you, after I got out of Second City, I got 3 films, a pilot, and a series of commercials. So, you know, when you were younger in those days, 40 years ago, you thought that Second City was the ticket to fame. And that was the thing that got in the way of the wonders of the work. Where when I finally went into stand-up and I was responsible for me and my point of view not being filtered through 5 other or 6 other cast members before it was okay to go on stage, I thought, okay, I'm going to set this standard for myself. And I also wanted my writing room, I wanted it to be fun. I wanted people to be welcome. I wanted them to feel that they could make mistakes and that all effort was rewarded. Because I'd written on This Hour is 22 Minutes for way back in 1997, and I couldn't stand it. It's a different room now, though, I'm told, over the last several years. But the writing room was a humiliatorium. It was too cutthroat. It was too, I don't know. It just didn't have the vibe that I enjoyed working within the context of. In the first year I put Black Fly together, you know, it was very difficult to work with there. You know, I had a couple of writers who'd come from drama and they didn't get the funny. They didn't trust the funny. They didn't trust its subversive nature, but they did know structure. So there was a lot of push and pull there. So finally, when Black Fly was canceled and I hit the road hard for 7 years, when I got the series, I'd learned an awful lot in the battle-scarred trenches of television to make this work a different way. And Lynn Harvey, who was my executive producer, deserves a great deal of credit for that, because she put a team together and brought people on who I didn't know, who I had to trust would find my voice. And Paul Pogue is one of them. Scott Montgomery's another one. Gary Campbell, all these cats, you know. And I'm a better man for it. They made me a better comedian and a more enlightened individual.
We got a couple comments have come in here. Denny Leger is saying people who dare to be original tend to get noticed. So he's saying a well done, Mr. James.
Thank you. I had no choice. I was, you know, like 37 pounds that I was 15 years old, and 21 of that was my head. Original chicken cat, man.
Mike Gamash has said that we got a reminder earlier today, but waiting until too late to tell our national treasures in whatever domain how much we appreciate them. So he would like to mention that he consider you, Ron, one of our comedic treasures.
Oh my gosh, Mike, look at that. Is that the Comedy Nest logo behind you?
That is the Comedy Nest. Mike is a Montreal comedian here who I work with. I do a weekly show with Mike, actually. We just kind of, it started out just friends chatting together to make sure that we're okay. So,
well, thank you, Mike. Thanks a million, buddy. Coming from another foot soldier in the comedy trenches, I take that as a high accolade. And I wish to God I'd have seen Norm. I never ever did, and I didn't know him either. And I have friends, though. My good buddy and collaborator Chris Finn worked the road with him. He and Norm and Brent Butt, and he has nothing but great things to say about him. And I just see that Rebecca Kohler, who wrote for me for a season, opened for Norm too, and had just a wonderful time. So he was a great one, just great.
He had been struggling with cancer for the past 9 years, is what it turns out. So when he did his final appearance on the final Letterman show, he knew that he had cancer. And
When he,
that kind of adds.
when he was so filled with, oh my gosh, and he had
Yeah.
what a constitution. That's the kind of constitution and standard emotional control that made that man write the kind of jokes he did, because he never went for the cheap laugh.
Yeah.
You know, my IT person and friend and business partner, actually, in my streaming shows in my living room, Keith Tomasak, used to work, who's from Montreal too. Maybe you know him. He talks about how bright Norm was, and how impressed he was when he saw Norm in the early days. I mean, the guy was 21 years old and doing Ed Broadbent jokes. Not a lot of guys doing that. I went to see some comedy here last week in Toronto, and I was surprised at how lame some of the comics were.
I think every city sort of has its own flavor. Being in Montreal, I will definitely admit color and movement seem to be what's recognized here more often than not. But Ottawa, where Norm Macdonald started, got his start. It was also where Mike Macdonald got his start.
And Jeremy Hotz.
Jeremy Hotz and John Doerr.
John Doerr's an Ottawa dude, is he?
Yep.
Oh wow.
And they're all very much known for their originality. I think originality is the flavor tone or the point that comes from the
Four
Ottawa.
quintessentially different comedians.
Yeah.
And four very strong voices.
Yeah. And all strong with originality.
Yes.
Now, I had a question that I wanted to follow up on, but I think I'll get to it a little bit later. Now you've mentioned already the year that's been the almost year and a half that's been, and you're just getting back on stage now. How did you deal with like the shows being canceled, with the not having the creative outlet that you normally have, like the shared experience with a live audience?
Well, it was very difficult. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I streamed shows from my living room, got right on it. And, well, not right on it. It was tentative at first, but I did it. I remember somebody asked me to do their husband's 65th birthday party, a friend of mine from Halifax. And I did it toward the computer. And I thought, okay, I mean, it's not, it's not, I'm not getting an appendectomy with a pointy stick in the forest. That didn't hurt. And then I did another show. A theater reached out to me, and I did a show. I said, okay, that's cool. And then I decided to do my own. And we did okay, got 800 people. I thought, boy, that's pretty good with very minimal advertising. And then we did our New Year's show, which I wrote with Chris Finn and Paul Poe. We did 3,500 viewers, $30 a pop. Yes.
Wow.
In my living room right here. And then we did another one in March, which was we did 2,300 people there. And I also worked and wrote on the book. And I try to stay healthy. I exercise a lot, I got a rower and I got a bike. And so I always found that endorphin buzz is really good for me. And I kept in touch with my daughters. I visited my girlfriend when I could, and we got through it together, and I kept in touch with friends, and I try not to catastrophize, but I'm not going to lie, seeing those dates disappear was a financial kick in the cojones, bro.
Yeah. And
then I'm keeping my fingers crossed. My Ontario Fall Tour, which is supposed to start October the 28th and go to November 14th or 16th, isn't scuttled by the variant. Theaters at 50% capacity. They're finding hard to get staff. I don't know, man. I mean, we stayed optimistic this summer, just like last summer. Things are going to turn around, right? And Mu is afoot. Delta's afoot. People won't get vaccinated, for Christ's sake. It's crazy, it's just, I mean, if it wasn't for the polio vaccine, we'd all be wearing leg braces.
Yeah. There's so many people, like the mRNA, the fact that there's the vaccines with mRNA that utilize that, but that there's been vaccines that've been utilizing that since the 80s. It's
They're
not
just
a new
people
technology.
that look, all the signs are spelled wrong. Someone posted something today, the guy holding up the sign that said, "I'm smarter than the scientists." You know, and just look at them being interviewed last night. Really, really, what conspiracy theories were you up to last time? Flat Earth Society? There's a lot of flat earthers, you know. Flat Earth. Flat Earth, Paul. For the love of Jesus. You want to test your theory out? Take a flying leap off the CN Tower. I'm sure you'll see the glaring holes in your argument on the way down before you hit the pavement with a splat, you silly fuck.
The modern father of the flat Earth movement was actually a comedian here in Montreal.
No.
Yes, the guy that sort of repopularized it and really promoted it. He was doing conspiracy theory jokes, and he was putting them up online. And then his flat Earth movement, like jokes, started getting a lot of traction, which got him money. And
so now he's just playing them.
Yes.
He's a charlatan like L. Ron Hubbard. If you want to make some money, invent a religion. Bingo. Yeah. Wow.
Lynn Alex is giving us some laughs. Denis Leger put this in earlier saying, I think that many of the best things that I've ever learned have come from the mouths of comedians. So.
A lot of public school teachers will disagree with that, Dan, but thank you very much, buddy. Yeah, yeah.
Now you've also
you know, by the way, which is interesting because when I'll make a political joke on my Facebook page, I had the picture of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. There's a Tyrannosaurus Rex monster up toward Huntsville beside the road that they've got in the store, and I just took the picture and I said the People's Party of Canada new political strategist. And so people, just a little joke, right? But they're also sensitive. Somebody got back and said, stick to comedy. But that is comedy.
That is comedy.
That is comedy.
Yeah, I had a photographer do sort of the same thing to me. And I said to them, well, why are you using words? Shouldn't you be using pictures? Just a little rebut. But this is the other thing I wanted to talk to. I mean, we lost the shows. You've had the online shows. Just one follow-up on that is do you feel that it's missing something if you don't have that immediate audience reaction?
Oh, yeah. It's something you had to get used to. I mean, It certainly slowed me down. But it's kind of like you're in a space capsule orbiting the Nebulon galaxy, sending bits back to fellow Earthlings. You know, what was that tag for aliens? In space, no one can hear you scream. Well, during the pandemic, in space, no one can hear you laugh. It was difficult. But it was the rules of the arena we happened to be playing in, and it was the way we had to make a living. And, you know, you watch Colbert or you watch Kimmel, and they're doing it from home. And so you think, well, everybody's in the same boat, kind of. And there was still the Trumpian chaos we could wrap our head around then, too. So he was endless amounts of material, and justifiably so. But now, of course, it took bell bottoms to, 2 years to get to Canada from California, and here we go. We've got protesters ringing the hospitals in downtown Toronto.
Yeah,
if they can bring the cops out for homeless people who are just trying to have an existence in a public park without being bothered, surely they could bring the Mounties out for these guys that are protesting in front of hospitals. I'm not an advocate of strong-arm totalitarian tactics, but
preventing an ambulance from getting into emergency.
You know what? When me trumps we, everybody loses. Period. So.
Denis Leger is also saying comedians should underestimate the power of their words. They can cut through a lot of prejudice and racism by being funny about these subjects, which is true. And also from the Flat Earth movement, they can also spread disinformation just as well. Now you mentioned Trump. You actually had a few online viral hits with I think appearances at Winnipeg where you mentioned Trump, and you gave...
no, that was in the days. That was in Winnipeg. That was the viral hit I had was one that I posted from my kitchen last year. That Occupy Democrats picked it up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did 4 million viewers on that, man.
Yeah, but this is Trump is not an unknown subject to you. You've hit him several times.
Yeah,
and I don't think anyone who follows you should be surprised when you hit them again. Now, besides the effect that COVID had on your career, this past 2-3 years, the political climate that has come across, and that even in Canada we feel some of the effects from.
I know it's changing in the West. That's the first place. That's always the litmus. That's always the canary in the coal mine of sensitivities. I mean, conservatives are always calling us snowflakes, and they're the first guys to start whining when you call them on it, right? And the deeper south you go in Alberta, the more conservative and biblical it gets. And I mean, for the longest time, you wanted to steer away from excessive sex jokes, and the whole set to be dick and titty jokes. And but it seems to me that's the only safe terrain these days when everybody's so polarized politically. I don't know what it's going to be like when we go back out. I hope that the people who are buying tickets to see me and the audience that I've nurtured over the years are buying a ticket who know what they're getting, right? And you learn over time. But then again, there's a responsibility with comedy to tip the apple cart. You have to tip the apple cart. And you have to, Lynn, Alex, yeah, and so is Western Ontario. There's a lot of anti-maskers there, Lynn. So you have to tip. It's our job to tip the apple cart, not ride in it. And it was fine when the status quo was more or less, was less volatile. But now it's a crazy election. Conservatives are playing footsie with the wingnut section of their party. And I mean, come on, man, 49% of that party voted for Bernier. It's not such an aberration. Right? And that's not to say that Justin Trudeau doesn't have things to answer for. $912 million to those wee grifters. His manipulation and basically desecration of Jody Wilson-Raybould's service. There's lots that, but there's something about it that seems liberal politics as usual, though, right? That there's always some kind of liberal hubris that compromises them, that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right? Yeah. Well, that's familiar to us. It happened with Chrétien and the Gomery inquiry and all the kickbacks and graft, and old boy patronage. But there's a virulent and vicious element to the PPC that I find very unseemly. It's one thing to argue policy. It's something else to throw dog shit on a candidate, man.
Yeah. You mentioned there's been a little bit of a through line in the fact that when you came back from LA, you realized you wanted to follow your bliss. You realized that you wanted to do the work for you. You didn't want to wait on so much on the bookers. You didn't want to wait on someone else to make the career for you. You were making the calls to the theater.
Well, I had a family to feed too,
Yes.
I mean, there was that. I mean, it was just a simple rule. My father brought his check home every 2 weeks. He fed us. He didn't drink his check. He was responsible. And it's just, I saw him work in his house. He took me fishing. We were friends. And so my wife was a stay-at-home mom. And I didn't want somebody else to be responsible for whether or not we're going to have a vacation in the wintertime.
Yep.
So it was that too.
But I think it's that idea of personal responsibility, which is helping you weather these situations now, and the view, because there's a lot of people of your age, around your age, who look at the Trumpettes, who are looking at the PPC, the People's Party of Canada, even the fringe element of the Conservative, and are kind of okay.
No shit. Yeah. I'm moving further left.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as you get older,
by standing still, you're moving further left.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they are, and you're exactly right. There's Hey, man, these kids these days. Well, the millennials got the shaft, man.
Yeah.
You know, they can't buy houses. At least when I was 32, I could hope someday that I might be able to get into a house. And I did a semi-detached in the beaches. 1980, in 1980, when we got at 93, we got it in 96 for $207,000. Sure, I was walking around on the floors banging nails down that were popping up from the wood in the wintertime and telling the girls to wear their slippers so a nail wouldn't go through their foot. Yeah, we had raccoons in the basement, but still it was mine. There was a roof over our head. But today, I mean, and then you compound that with the apocalyptic scenarios of climate change, and you have this perfect storm of nihilism and anxiety. And it's hard for them to think, oh, yeah, the world tomorrow is going to be better than today, when all the information coming down the pipe says, no. You know?
You're like a cheerier George Carlin.
Cheerier George Carlin. Well, I'm trying not to be funny. I'm being serious, you know.
But that's just it. With your comedy, you are serious as well. You are delivering funny. I'm sorry. I'm very much enjoying this.
Thank you.
Interview.
And the issues around bad water on the reserves, you know, poison water. We did that joke 6 years ago in a show. I wrote it, and it's still not fixed, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's look, if we're going to be giving our water away free, we were talking about free trade, right? Because America's entitled to our water as soon as Arizona runs Dead Gulch dry of water, which, if you read the New York Times 3 weeks ago, it's on the way to. You know, Vegas, every time Vegas flushes the toilet, the Colorado River drops 40 feet. And it's true, in the morning and in the evening, it's down, man. Ask anybody who's rafted the Colorado River. Whoa, here comes the wave. And so, look, they're entitled to our water. So I said, if we're going to be giving our water away free, why don't we give the clean water to our indigenous reserves? You know, they've been boiling it for 25 years, strung along some boreal gulag. You'd be safer drinking water from a pissed-in puddle at the Mogadishu dump than you would from 3/4 of the reserves strung along the tree line. You know, come on, Justin, how hard can it be? Take a course at Home Depot. I'll guarantee you, if brown water were coming out of the taps in a Tony corner of Canada like Westmount, Rosedale, or Kitsilano, it'd be fixed faster than a horny horse in the Mounties musical ride. Right?
Boom.
And yet, boom. You know, oh, CBC, I don't know about that one. You had to fight with them about that. Another one I had to fight with, they wouldn't do it. Trump said that women who get abortion should be punished. Beg to differ. The only woman who should be punished is Donald's mother for not having one. Wouldn't do it. So there's always a fight. And like Carlin said, Carlin was driving with Richard Pryor's manager years ago when HBO first came on. And Carlin said, where would we be without HBO? Where would we be? It saved their life. I think it saved the life of stand-up, because it was Carlin who said, you watched that special on him, he said, I was never good on television. It's too corporate. And television never got me either. Series television never got me. And that's neither here nor there. It's just the way it is. And Blackfly, I envisioned a black adder set during the Canadian fur trade. I love the way Monty Python used historic context to find its satire, and that's what I shot for. And instead, Global, you know, you have to take notes from Global. They're telling you what to do. They're paying the check. So I became Gilligan in a tri-corner hat with a ponytail. It's like the Ron James show. I said, you think you've won, you got your own show, then one day you wake up and your hair's dyed mahogany. What the fuck?
Do you think with the pandemic and the plethora now, the easy access for so many people to be online, like this show here, the fact that you were doing shows from your own living room, do you think that's I don't think it's going to be a challenge to the big broadcasters because they have deep pockets, but do you think that gives you the chance to sort of, I will do the show I want and I can put it online as I want it? Do you think that gatekeeper is sort of now, because the technology is out there to make it a little bit easier for people to put on shows?
Well, there's still the taste of your audience you have to consider.
Yes.
And I never had, I mean, with all the deference I have for George Carlin, I bought a $75 ticket to see him almost 15 years ago in Harrods in Vegas. He talked for 90 minutes. in front of 2,500 people and never got a laugh, Paul.
Yeah.
That's when he found his quote unquote authentic voice. But the authentic voice, I think, in my humble opinion, forgot what the audience was there for. They come to laugh. I always used to say, if you want a sermon, you can go somewhere else. That's why you have to pepper my 2-hour shows with political observation, some scatological content, an F-bomb dropped here and there, stories about going to church growing up, playing house league hockey, midlife dating, getting older, environmental concerns. There's a little bit of everything. And I wrap that in a bow of language. Language isn't overdone in the show, though, because it become a flavor that gets it can be overdone. You have to be judicious where it's used. And that, I have to say, way back in 91, I saw Dennis Miller's first special, Black and White, before he went hardcore Republican. And I just thought he was a disillusioned liberal at the time, which, quite frankly, let's call a spade a spade. Several of us are these days. It breaks my heart. And I loved how he loved language. And people asked him at the time, aren't you afraid people are going to be intimidated by your use of big words? And he said, get a dictionary. Get a dictionary. I love the spoken word. I always have. And it took a long time to become proficient at its judicious use within my sets so that it didn't become an overriding flavor, but acted as a tone of integrity that people would walk away talking about. But you always have to land on the laugh.
The amount of times that I've had discussions with people, and we mention the lowest common denominator, making sure that the joke reaches the most amount of people in your audience. And I want to say, but I want to challenge them to think a little bit more.
You should.
The joke.
That's what I took from Second City.
Yeah.
You have to. Yeah, you got to challenge. I think Norm Macdonald challenged them. He challenged them with how he played with the art form. I just watched his roast of Bob Saget. Have you watched that?
It's been a while, but yes.
Jesus, it's hilarious. Have you seen him on Jon Stewart talking about the crocodile hunter that got eaten? He's 32.
Yeah.
Imitate Norm. That's a ripe old age for a crocodile hunter. Anyway, he was just such an original. So was Robin Williams. So was Pryor. So was Carlin. But that's the thing. All comedians are originals. We're the,
when they're trying to be.
We're the odd puppy in the litter, man.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. That's why it's so refreshing. And I'm not around them enough, but it's why it's so refreshing to be with our ilk at a bar afterwards when career isn't part of the game. That was the unfortunate thing with Just for Laughs. Everybody wanted to catch lightning in a bottle and be noticed and head off down to Los Angeles and kick a bag of money around a Warner Brothers lot while you dreamt up television shows. It was just a fantasy that was perpetuated some reason. But, being Montreal, come full circle.
It comes back to the gatekeepers.
One of the great things about Just for Laughs was you were able to work with your heroes. And Don Rickles hosted my second gala. And I was doing that bit about camping's fun in the daytime, but as soon as the sun goes down, everything that eats meat wakes up. I was pretty safe, though. I camped beside some Germans. God bless them, with their accent will scare anything. Ich wollte lieben der Außen uns, lieben auch nicht schnell. Ich kann der Rausen der Aus des Lieben, ich wollte lieben der auf den Schliefen der. And they were only trying to set the friggin' tent up. I don't care where you are, hiking the Cabot Trail or rafting the belly of the Grand Canyon. You hear, ich wollte lieben der Aus und ich schlieg der auf and on. You're making a beeline for Switzerland. You and the kids run for the border with the Von Trapp family. I'll hold them off. High on the hill is a lonely goat hut. People get testing with me teasing the Germans, but come on. You picked 2 world wars. You're bound to take some ribbon, don't you figure? My father's from Newfoundland. They've been making Newfie jokes about him his entire life. He never once invaded Czechoslovakia. Anyway, that's my bit. I come backstage. Rickles grabs me by the cheeks. Honest to God. There was another agent there. He said, Rickles, loved your set. Rickles comes up. He goes, how old are you? No. He didn't ask me. He goes, no. The first thing he says is, that's a great set. I said, thank you. And he goes, I didn't get my first break till I was 38 years old. I said, really? Wow, that's amazing. Kelly's Heroes. He said, correct. He said, how old are you? I said, 42. His face dropped like he was standing in front of a widow's face by her husband's closed coffin. Gently slapped me in the face, looks at me like this and says, you're finished. Anyway, so I go to his dressing room. I asked if I can have him autograph my poster, right? Mm-hmm. There's a little guy there who is Frank's, a little guy, it's to me, I'm 5'4", 3, whatever. Little guy there said, I was Frank Sinatra's stage manager for 30 years. I'll bring you into Mr. Rickles. Hold on. So I go into Mr. Rickles. He's standing there, not saying a thing. He's got his tuxedo open. He's just staring ahead like a bull. And he's got 2 high balls of ice water. They're beside him. I said, thank you, Mr. Rickles. He signs my poster. Funny is as funny does, and you are, Don Rickles. 6 months later, I'm stuck in a blizzard, driving from Kamloops to Prince George in the kind of snow a Yeti wouldn't wander. And that's trying to get to my gig. Almost dying with logging trucks coming out of the snow at me. Yeah. And that's what I remembered. So it's collateral on the long road traveled, brother. And that's really what it's about, is doing the best you can with what you've been given and not giving up. Never give up. Life is all about the long haul. Follow your bliss. The road takes no prisoners and comedy doesn't suffer fools. Another thing, just for laughs, met Billy Connolly, 2009, not 7. I'd done a concert performance there. Mm-hmm. And I saw Billy, and my producer, Lynn Harvey, went up and talked to him. Said, look, you're this guy's hero, my client's hero, my partner's hero. So I went up, I said, look, Billy, I just got to say, I saw your HBO special in Los Angeles during some pretty dark days of unemployment. And I just want to say it was my St. Paul and the road to Damascus epiphany. He looks at me and goes, fuck, I hope you don't open with that, do you? Oh, no. And I said, look, how did a Glaswegian welder become an international sensation in comedy? And he got pissed off. He looked at me and he said, with his defiant eyes, pulled his cigar out of his teeth and said, that's a question about fame. To hell with fame. Just sing your song. Sing your song. It's really all it's about. Singing your song and staying the course and keeping your eyes on the prize. We'll get through this. In what permutation, I don't know. Hopefully I'll be back on stage before the Martians invade, because that's coming next. Anyway.
You are such a professional, because you said you needed to be out at 7 o'clock. So we're 2 minutes away. I want to mention your book here again, all over the map. It's The Rambles and Ruminations from the Canadian Road. And it's a great insight. You mentioned Billy Connolly in the excerpts that I got a chance to read.
Yeah. It hits the stand September the 28th. Penguin Random House. You can order it on Amazon now, or Penguin Random House. And there's an audio version too. You get the rhythm of the words then.
And I just want to say that this channel is supported by the viewers. So there is a link tree that you can go to. That's www.linktr, so linktr.ee/Paul Ash. The first thing there is buy me a drink. First link there, buy me a drink, and that way you can donate to the show, keep it alive. So Amazon and Random House, you can buy Ron's book in advance. Definitely. Thank you very much for being on here, Mr. James.
Okay, brother.
We had a couple last comments have come in. Benjamin Boss is saying, thanks, Ron. Denis Leger is again, even in literature and art, no man who bothers about originality will ever be original. Whereas if you simply try to tell the truth without caring 2 pence about how often it has been told, you will 9 times out of 10 become original without ever having noticed it. That's C.S. Lewis.
Wow. Thank you very much. That's good company. All right, brother. Stay well.
You.
I got
as well.
My kid's waiting for me. See you, bud.
Enjoy.
Okay, pal. Good luck.
And I'll see people here next week. Bye.
Right on, buddy. Have a good one. Thoroughly enjoyable.
Thank you. You are. You definitely are thoroughly enjoyable.
Oh, no.